Today we pay tribute to those lives that were lost and to everyone that was impacted by the war in Sri Lanka and all of the injustices that have yet to be resolved. Many of those who were impacted by the war and by those injustices have come to Toronto to rebuild their lives and have become pillars of our community.
Tamil victims of the war in Sri Lanka that ended on the 18th of May 2009. Close to 146,000 Tamils lost their lives in 6 decades of struggling for self-determination. So on this Remembrance Day, it's important that we honor the Tamil victims and we inspire ourselves to continue their struggle for justice, freedoms, and reparation for their losses. The United Nations investigations determined that during the war in Sri Lanka, international crimes such as war crimes and crimes against humanity were committed, and yet there has been no judicial mechanism, no perpetrators have been brought to justice. And recently, in a cynical move, the president pardoned and released from prison the only one soldier, an army sergeant, who had been convicted by the courts and sentenced to prison for killing 8 civilians, including a child. And he was just released by the president last month. This is a far cry from justice. Tamils continue in Sri Lanka to suffer all kinds of prejudice, discrimination, and violation of their human rights. The lands that were stolen from them by the military have still not been restored, and the Tamil language has now been excluded from the national anthem. In the past, there were always 2 languages, and almost 200 people are still in detention. This is why, because of the continuing violations of the rights of Tamils, all of us should join the international community in collective action to realize the rights of Tamils people, to ensure that they have justice and reparation, redress in Sri Lanka.
The Canadian Tamil community and Tamils worldwide are marking the 11th year of the Mullivaikal genocide in Sri Lanka. Despite these challenging times with COVID-19, it's empowering to see the Tamil community come together to remember and honor the innocent civilians who perished in the genocide. 11 years ago, Tamils in Canada and across the world stood together, took to the streets, and showed resilience in demanding justice for the ongoing genocide. Hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians were killed at the hands of the Sri Lankan armed forces. And until this day, many are missing and are displaced. The human rights abuses by the Sri Lankan regime against the Tamils have gone unanswered for over a decade. Heartbreaking, devastating, one of the ugliest genocides of humanity. In Canada, we have a great emphasis on peace and promote justice for all. Despite 11 years passing, the Sri Lankan government has not made significant efforts to provide justice, answers, accountability for the lost lives and war crimes. I stand with the Tamil community and call on the Sri Lankan government to finally begin a process of accountability for the Tamil lives lost and affected in Sri Lanka during this horrific genocide. It's long overdue. Without justice, the community cannot move forward and begin a healing process. At this time of remembering and honoring all the lives that perished in the genocide, I offer my strength and support to you, and will continue to stand behind you in seeking justice.
Hello, this is Bonnie Crombie, Mayor of the City of Mississauga, and on behalf of the City of Mississauga and the members of my council, I join you on Tamil Memorial Day to remember the hundreds of thousands of Tamils who lost their lives in their struggle for human rights. The Tamil genocide remains a very dark and disturbing chapter in the world's history. It's hard to imagine the unthinkable crimes committed during this period, carried out against innocent individuals. And on this day, let us take a moment to remember how fortunate we are to call Mississauga and, of course, Canada our home. Let us honor the Canadian.
Kia koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, vanakkam. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person with you this year, given the alert level 2 restrictions. However, I know that the 18th of May holds special significance for our Sri Lankan Tamil community, and that it is commemorated as Tamil Genocide Remembrance Day. I know that each year you come together to remember the thousands of lives that was taken during the Sri Lankan Civil War. I know that you remember the brutality, the horrors, the sacrifice, the violence, and the sorrow.
We remember the victim of genocide. We remember a horrific time in Tamil history when hundreds of thousands of innocent people were brutally murdered during the final stage of the war. We share a collective pain and grief for the loved ones we lost. Our hearts feel empty because of the unspeakable horror and calculated cruelty of the Tamil genocide. Every Tamil Canadian has a story to tell, a story of loss, story of plight, a story of pain and suffering. Despite the pain and suffering, we feel the hope and aspiration of the Tamil people is peace, truth, and reconciliation. Those who lost their lives are looking down on us. Those who are still struggling, they are looking upon us with the hope that we will never forget. We stay strong and carry forward with our lives, not only for ourselves, but for the legacy of those we have lost and for the sake of future generations.
May 18th is a day of mourning for the Tamil community here in Canada and around the world. As we remember the horrific crimes that were committed at the end of the Sri Lankan Civil War. In the last Parliament, I proposed a motion to the Foreign Affairs Committee calling for Canada to support an independent investigation into declaring these crimes genocide. Canada should support that independent investigation, and my motion was ultimately adopted unanimously by the Foreign Affairs Committee, and a similar motion passed in the House of Commons. These motions need to be followed up by concrete action by the government to hold those responsible of serious international crimes accountable. This follows the legacy of former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, who boycotted the Commonwealth Summit in Colombo to protest ongoing human rights abuses targeting minorities in Sri Lanka. Conservatives have also called for the use of Magnitsky sanctions. The Magnitsky Act, passed by Conservative MP James Bazan, that would allow direct targeted sanctions of human rights abusers. Strong action to defend justice and human rights is required. Canada must become a leader again on these issues by championing a principled foreign policy, and I look forward to continuing to work with the Tamil community on these vital issues.
There are memories that are etched deep into our hearts. They change us, shape us, and haunt us all our lives. We think that not speaking about them can erase their existence, but the reality is they became a part of us. This memory is one of such.
பேரன்பு கொண்டும் பெரும் நம்பிக்கை கொண்டும் நான் நேசித்து நிற்கின்ற எனது அருமை தாய் தமிழ் உறவுகள் அனைவருக்கும் என் அன்பு வணக்கம். இன்று மே 18 இனப்படுகொலை நாள். உப்பில்லா கஞ்சியை நாமும் உண்டு நம் உறவுகளுக்கும் கொடுத்து இவ்வுறுதிமொழியை ஒவ்வொரு தமிழ் மகனும் தமிழ் பிள்ளையும் உறக்கச் சொல்ல வேண்டும்.
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer O'Connell, Member of Parliament for Pickering Uxbridge. It's unfortunate that we can't all be together right now because of everything that's happening with COVID-19, especially for such an important remembrance of the Mullivaikal massacre. But I want to commend and thank the volunteers at the Tamil Cultural and Academic Society of Durham, as well as the Durham Tamil Association, for their hard work and dedication for hosting this virtual remembrance vigil tonight for our community. The Mullivaikal massacre was a time of tremendous suffering for Tamils in Sri Lanka. It's been 11 years since 300,000 civilians were trapped between a bloody and horrific civil war. Tens of thousands of innocent people lost their lives, and almost 150,000 are still unaccounted for. This was one of the deadliest massacres in our lifetime anywhere around the world.
Vanakkam. Hi, I'm Andrea Horvath, leader of Ontario's official opposition New Democrats. Today marks 11 years since the Mullivaikal massacre at the end of a decades-long civil war in Sri Lanka. Today, New Democrats join Tamil community members to offer our solidarity and our support in your quest for justice and recognition of the Tamil genocide.
Today, the 18th of May 2020, we remember the Tamil genocide. It's been 11 years since the murder of over 160,000 Tamils in Sri Lanka, and justice has not been done.
Tamil people around the world are remembering our kith and kin who were massacred 11 years ago. As everyone around the globe is confined to their homes due to the coronavirus pandemic, we are united in keeping the memories of the victims of Sri Lanka's genocide.
It's now over 10 years since the terrible events at Mullivaikal. That was when Sri Lankan state forces persistently bombed an area where thousands of Tamil civilians had taken refuge. The Sri Lankan state encouraged people to go there, they told them they were safe, and then they bombed them relentlessly. It was a war crime. I want to see those responsible brought to justice. The estimates vary from 10 to 100,000 in terms of the number of people who lost their lives that day. But however many it was, it's clear that thousands of innocent Tamil people lost their lives at the hands of the Sri Lankan state in circumstances which were completely unjustified.
Today, the Canadian Tamil community and Tamils around the world are remembering the Mullivaikal genocide in Sri Lanka. Although times are challenging due to COVID-19 and the measures that entails, Tamils have shown incredible resilience in remembering the innocent civilians, the victims, and ensuring that there is a demand for justice. In 2009, the Tamils in Sri Lanka were subjected to a genocide at the hands of the Sri Lankan government.
Good afternoon. It's Marvin Rotran, City Councillor of Montreal, addressing the Tamil community in our city, throughout the province of Quebec and beyond. Today is a special day. We commemorate the Tamil genocide, the 150,000 people and more who died during the civil war in Sri Lanka. It should not be forgotten, 11 years after the end of this war, that most of those who died were civilians. There have been some positive efforts to build reconciliation since 2009, but for every step forward, there also seems to be one to go backwards. We have talked about a Lessons Learned and Conciliation Commission, which should have provoked major political change. It hasn't led to that.
இந்த கொரோனா நாம் இன்று திரள முடியவில்லை. நாம் வீடுகளிலிருந்து இனப்படுகொலை செய்யப்பட்ட நம் தொப்புள் கொடி உறவுகளுக்கு இந்த நிகழ்வினை
Vanakkam. For decades, Tamil people have experienced a campaign of genocide at the hands of the Sri Lankan government. From the burning of the Jaffna Library, to the anti-Tamil violence in what is known as Black July in 1983, to the thousands of Tamils killed in the Mullivaikal massacre. Tamils have faced years of violence, of being forcibly disappeared, and genocide.
Dear friends in the Tamil community of Montreal, I'm honored, if humbled, to spend a moment with you as you commemorate a terribly somber anniversary in remembrance of the genocide of some 150,000 members of our community at the hands of the Sri Lankan army. It's indeed a dark and unresolved past, and I understand that proper accountability for that terrible tragedy has not yet been forthcoming. So